17% down on Monday or Tuesday night, and the stock is not doing very well, and we can see that after the, let's say, multiple year downtrend, we had a fairly nice trend reversal in in the middle of the summer or late summer, and we went all the way up to even 15-16 US dollar, and then we're basically back to where we were at in the early summer. And obviously the last week hasn't been great at all, and this drop here came, if you have missed it, due to the possible dilution in 2029 and 2030. We don't need to go into further detail. We know that there's gonna be most likely some degree of dilution, and to the tune of, I think, totally possibly 1.15 billion US dollar. The most important thing to look at, in my opinion, is just to have a complete understanding of the market and the competition. So we can see that Xpeng and NIO are roughly in the same spot when it comes to market capitalization. Then we got Li Auto, that is more than 2 to almost 3 times the size of these companies. And finally we got Tesla, which is sitting at over 800 billion market cap. And it's quite interesting with these numbers, because you can also see that all the other 3 companies are doing fairly okay in terms of stock price on the 52-week range, but NIO is obviously not doing that good. We're sitting basically very close to the 52-week range low end. So the stock market and the investors are not too happy about this situation. And my question in this video is this fair? Are we seeing a realistic picture of the stock price based on the reality out there, or is NIO undervalued compared to, let's say, all these companies, especially Xpeng and Li Auto? To do that, I have made a chart here, and you can see that the delivery numbers for each company for the last 4 years, and for 2023 is rough estimations based on the first 2 quarters that are reported, and also we are getting good indications on the weekly delivery numbers for 2023 of the, let's say, July, August and September. So I'm quite confident on these numbers for 2023, but again, these are not set in stones, but these are the 3 years obviously are reported. So let's start with 2020. As you can see, Tesla delivered 500,000 cars more or less in 2020, which is good. And then we've got NIO, that was actually second, and they delivered just below 44,000 cars. And then you can see that Xpeng was at 27,000 and Li Auto a bit more at 32,000. Now, the interesting part is that next year, so in 2021, Tesla almost went up in basically 100% in terms of deliveries. And then you can see that NIO did actually more than that. So really good. I mean, NIO is definitely doing good until 2021. And also, again, Xpeng, you look at them, they went from below 30,000 to almost 100,000. So they did more than 3 times for that year in terms of volume. And then you had Li Auto, which also did basically a 3x in terms of delivery volume. And yeah, so they are doing good, all companies in this sense. And then we've got the 2022 numbers, so last year. Again, Tesla did really good. I mean, sure, they didn't hold the same pace, but it's still almost 400,000 additional cars compared to the year previous. NIO started to slow down a bit, and you can see the same trend for Xpeng as well. NIO and Xpeng, they were not doing close to the same pace, but it's still, I mean, if you think about car companies, these numbers are still great. It's just sometimes some years we can see that these companies can 2x or 3x in terms of volume deliveries, but again, even 30% is really good for 1 year, so nothing bad there. And then we had Li Auto that also did a bit better, but nothing out of ordinary compared to the others. But the interesting thing here is this year, and as you can see, Tesla again slowing down a bit, and as you can see, the dark green section from 2020 to 2023, we can see that Tesla is definitely I mean, if you could say, compared to the other 3 Chinese companies, losing a bit of market share, if you could say. Again, this is not I'm not talking about Tesla. I'm definitely a believer in Tesla. It's just compared to the other Chinese companies, they seem to lose the ground, and it makes sense. And then you can see that NIO is, I mean, they are not doing too bad. You can see that my estimations is 190,000 for this year. And I will go more into details for NIO specific numbers later in the video. Then you can see Xpeng. I mean, they are still doing good as well, 150,000, but a bit slower than NIO. And that's definitely something that we have seen. And yeah, so the Xpeng is not doing as good as NIO, but they are still doing great. But then this is the real outlier there, Li Auto. I mean, to do from 130,000 last year to estimated of, let's say, 350,000 plus this year. I mean, we are talking about like basically a 3x again, based on those like 100,000 numbers to 3x from there. It's like, I mean, this is something special. But then you have to also remember that Li Auto is not doing pure electric cars. They will do soon, but these are more like hybrid cars. So you have to take that also into consideration. And the big difference as well, outlier is NIO, that they have their battery swapping solutions. So this is something that we will see in the numbers, that it's actually part of the reason that it might not be worth it maybe. And it might be the reason why the company is not doing that good in the stock market right now. But again, it's just speculation at this stage. So I said that we have to go back and look at NIO specific numbers. So in this chart here, you can see that, yeah, January was okay, and February was really good. And then there was like the Chinese New Year that was on January this year. So yeah, it explains the difference between January and February. March, sort and so, okay. April and May, really, I mean, bad. Really, really bad for numbers for April and May. And then in this period, it was the time where we had like the price cuts from Tesla and competition, and NIO was a bit slow to cut their prices and give incentives to the customers in the difficult market in Q2 this year. And then additional to that, they also had a lot of like retooling in the factories for the new NT2 models. You know, I have to remember, many of their cars was like, yeah, they changed them to the new powertrain and new designs. So this is the reason why April and May and June to some degree was really bad. But you can see that there was some rebound in June, but actually the really good news was in July. I mean, more than, double than June numbers, and also August basically the same. Again, very close to 20,000 in August. So, and then we have the numbers from the first weeks in September, and we can see that combined in the first 2.5 weeks of September, we are roughly at 10,000, 9,900 registrations. Again, we know that registrations are not always equal to deliveries, but I could say there is, let's say, a 15%, maybe 20% difference plus minus in terms of discrepancy between the registrations and deliveries. So we could be, let's say, with these numbers, we could be anywhere from 8,500 to, let's say, 12,000. And it's still like, almost 2 weeks left to be reported from the 18th of September to the last day of September. So I think like we are most likely getting above 16,000 cars, which still would be very good. It would be like better than every other month this year, other than August and July. And maybe we can even get very close to that 19,000-20,000 numbers. So Q3 seems to be really, really good for NIO. And if they have the same pace, we can see that if they get close to 60,000 cars in Q3, and we see this number here, 39,791 is the amount of delivered in July and August. And if we add to that, let's say 17,000, I mean, we will get not to 60,000, but let's say 57,000. But let's assume we get 60,000, and then we get 81,000 cars in Q4. We are just below 200,000 cars. Now, this is falling short of the what the representatives of NIO higher up said even just during the last earnings report. They were pushing for numbers of 240,000, but again, at this point you have to be cautious with what the management says. Not everything that they have said in the last 18 months or close to nothing has been what actually been happening or is the reality. So there is a sort of too offensive messaging sometimes from the management, and something that I don't agree with. But even if we take that into consideration, going from like last year's number, again going back to this graph here, last year we delivered like 122,000 cars, and let's say if NIO managed anything above 180, 190,000, which is very realistic in my opinion, at least 170 say, it's still a really good pace of increase. And if we, let's say, get 170,000, that would mean that NIO would deliver 10% of the cars that Tesla is delivering by end of this year. Okay, it's not like as fast as I would have believed. I in my opinion, I would have expected that NIO would be even like close to 280,000, listening to the management in 2021 and 2022. But we have fallen short of that. But still, despite that, we are, I mean, again, 1/10 of Tesla's volume. It's really good. So yeah, that's like the hard numbers on deliveries. So I don't think the deliveries are as bad as the stock price is showing, and this is probably due to the like diabolical Q1 and Q2, especially Q2 with the gross margin coming in at 1%, which is, I mean, nonsense. And yeah, they were losing a lot of money in the last earnings report to the tune of more than $1 billion and even more actually. So yeah, the last earnings wasn't good, but again, the stock market is about the future, and we can see now that NIO is going to have much better numbers going forwards. So speaking of the gross margin, we know that yeah, the numbers weren't good for this last reported quarter Q2, but the management, they are quite confident that we are getting close to the double digit for the Q3, and this isn't a surprise in my opinion. We can see that record deliveries in July and August, and most likely also in September, or close to record. We can see that, I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise to have much better margins compared to the Q2 and Q1. And we also know that the price of lithium carbonate has been still going down even more. So the battery costs are going down, and yeah, this should all be positive headwinds for NIO. If we look at, again, you remember the numbers I showed you with the stock price. Now, start with revenue, and this is obviously until Q2 of this year. You can see that Tesla is increasing quite confidently, and they are in the league of their own. But again, their valuation is also in the league of their own. So yeah, you have to consider that as well. And the three Chinese company, we can see that XPeng is smaller than NIO by quite some distance. Then we have NIO, and then we have Li Auto. And we can see here that also if going from revenue to gross profit, again, Tesla in league of their own, but the problem is that it seems to be a slightly more difference in gross profit compared to the, let's say, revenue. So Tesla is more efficient in this sense, and yeah, and this is where the problem starts for NIO and XPeng. And you can see that Li Auto has been kind of going in the right direction, whereas XPeng has been stagnating, and NIO has been going even in the wrong direction over the past, let's say, 4, 5, 6 quarters. You can see SG&A, and this is very interesting. Tesla delivers, let's say, 10 times more cars than NIO and XPeng, and let's say 5, 6 times more than Li Auto. And here's the interesting, that Tesla has, I mean, in relative to the number of cars that they delivered, again, 10 times more than NIO, the SG&A expenses is like 3 times more. So again, Tesla is much more efficient right now than NIO. And actually NIO is less efficient than XPeng and Li Auto as well, by quite some distance. So this could be reflected in the stock price to some degree. And then, yeah, this one is not so interesting in my opinion. Let's go to research and development cost. Again, look at this. Tesla is estimated to deliver 10 times more cars as NIO, but their research and development cost is barely 2 times more. And also NIO is delivering roughly the same amount of cars as XPeng, but their research and development cost is twice as XPeng and Li Auto. But then again, you know, the battery swapping, this is probably where we see the battery swapping cost, you know, in NIO. It's such an intensive component to NIO's business, and we also know that NIO is trying to like vertically integrate more than XPeng and Li Auto, which is a good thing for the future. But this also, you have to like take in consideration that maybe the company won't survive, or they have to dilute even more in the future. So this is the reason why the stock price, in my opinion, the market is not trusting the NIO management, especially in the last 2 years. And this is, I think, the worst of everything. So combining everything, you can see cash on hand. So Tesla is steadily increasing, and then you can see that XPeng is like stagnating, and Li Auto also increasing roughly at the pace of Tesla. Problem here is NIO. I mean, look at this. Just like a year ago, they had almost 8 billion or roughly 8 billion US dollar on the balance sheet. And we are, I mean, very quickly burning through those reserves at 4 billion now, basically, or 4.3, I think, according to the earnings estimate. And this is a big issue. I mean, look at the difference between NIO and Li Auto. And if you see at Q2 of 2022, they are at the same stage. Li Auto actually increased their position, and I mean, they are in no risk of dilution in that sense. But look at NIO. Sure, the absolute position is better than XPeng, but XPeng is actually showing some kind of stagnation. It's not necessarily getting much worse here, but NIO, I mean, like, this is not good. Now, I don't think that this rate of decrease in cash positions will continue, because again, remember that Q2 and Q1, especially Q2, was especially bad quarter in terms of deliveries. And as we can see, we will have like almost 3 times number of deliveries, or at least 2.5 times more deliveries in Q3 than Q2, and probably Q4 will have another record delivery. So their numbers, given that they also indicated that the gross margin of the next quarters will be much better, like they said that we are going to have something like 10% on the gross margin for Q3 and close to 15% by Q4. So these numbers will be much better, and the loss from operations and net loss will, I mean, be cut by a substantial margin. So I do believe that we have most likely, in my opinion, seen the worst, because the next quarter's earnings report will be in like more than a month, and I mean this quarter is gonna be closed in just a couple of weeks. So the Q3 will be much better than Q2, and we also know that there's another component to NIO's earnings, and this is with the new phone. And I think the rumors are that there will be roughly 50,000 phones being sold, and if you do a quick math, 50,000 NIO phones being sold this year, and the price is just below $1,000 US. So we will talk about like another 50 million US dollar of additional revenue. You can see that the other sales will also keep increasing, and actually this is something that most people don't look at. The other sales, so like everything else other than the cars, it's quite substantial. I mean, 220 million almost for the last quarter, which was more than 100% increase compared to the quarter of 2022, and 10% sequentially from first quarter of 2023. So I think they're most likely, the worst is behind us, and especially the stock market will react, in my opinion, in a good way when they see the gross margin going up to very quickly, going up from like 1% to, let's say, 10% or 9% in Q3. If that's not the case, then really I should and you should consider investment in NIO, because if the management, despite these huge delivery numbers, are not able to increase the gross margin to somewhat acceptable levels at close to, let's say, 10%. And in my opinion, the worst case scenario is like 7.5-8% gross margin. If it's below that, then there should be some really alarm bells going on, because then the CEO cannot just go out there and again come with more excuses. So we have to see some good improvement. I think we will see that. Otherwise, he was literally lying to the market. And it doesn't, like, I wouldn't invest in a company where the CEO is basically lying to the market. They were very confident on the gross margin for Q3. They have to come in close to those 10% and close to 15% by Q4 this year. Otherwise, you really should reconsider this company. And so thank you for watching the video, and see you in the next one.